Thank you for joining us for the Protocols IO webinar. Just a quick heads up, we are recording this webinar, so keep that in mind when we open up the QA section at the end. Today we're going to be talking about improving workflow using the Protocols.io manager, the task manager. And some of you may not realize that every workspace has a task manager, so we'll be going through about how to access the task manager, creating tasks, assigning tasks, and an example of the overall workflow. This is the Protocols.io task manager. It is just kind of like a highlight overview. This one happens to have a pretty busy schedule. Now, when we're talking about the task manager and the different elements of Protocols.io, there's really three primary areas of the website that most people spend their time in. And that's the file manager, workspaces, formerly known as groups, and of course the Protocols.io editor. For today's webinar, we're primarily going to be talking about workspaces because that's where the task manager is housed, that's where it lives. And the task manager is almost exclusively used for invisible workspaces because it's a little bit more of a private thing to do. So let's go ahead and get started. Accessing the task manager. So I have a sample group here, my muscle tissue clearing group. And on the left sidebar here, I could expand that window, which I'll do in a second. But there's also on the right side panel, there's a tasks button. And so whether I click on that or I open up my left sidebar and click on tasks, that's how you access the task manager. And so when I click on tasks, I'm taken to the task manager or the task list. And I have an example here that's actually a pretty busy schedule, which is nice. In addition to a list view, there's a calendar view. And so instead of having everything listed in one particular order, you can also see how things are scheduled throughout the week. Next, we'll go over creating a task. So when you first access the Protocols.io task manager, you'll have an empty slate, an empty schedule. Keep in mind that there might be a particular week that you might want to focus on. So you'll be able to just press next or previous to access different types of weeks within that month. Or you could access the calendar view in different formats. But today we're going to be kind of going through the typical workflow of not just creating a task, but also why it's important to manage tasks, not necessarily with this task manager, but with task managers in general. So for creating a task, I have really two options. One is to go ahead and press this Create Task button up here, or I could simply click on the calendar view. So if I want to create a task for Friday, I can just click on that time slot and it opens up a window. So this is the new task window. It allows me to create a new task and save a new task. And there's a couple different elements here that are important. Of course, the title of the task is probably the most important. A description, a lightweight description of what we're looking to do or accomplish with this task. And most importantly, I can actually search for protocols that are associated with this task. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this next slide here, and we'll see that I'm going to add a title, a description, and I'm just going to run a quick search for cut and run, just a general example. And you'll see that a list of protocols, and this is a scrollable list, a list of protocols is shown here, so I could find the exact protocol I'm looking for. Now, before I go ahead and press save, there are a couple other elements we can take a look at, such as a color that I could assign, assignee, which we'll be getting into right after this overview, and a duration, whether it's going to be a 30-minute task, a 1-hour task, or perhaps even a 1 or 2 day task. And of course, the date. So when I press save, you'll see that, or actually what I've done now is I've selected that protocol. So you see it's nicely embedded into the task. And now when I press save, you'll see the task is already on my task manager. And so that was just a quick example. So the next thing we'll be going over is assigning tasks, because you'll probably be working with different teammates in your lab, and this is something that will help you differentiate. Now, we give you flexibility to change colors of tasks or the way you've laid it out. Different task managers or product management tools might have the opportunity to give you priority levels. You really have a lot of flexibility here because you can add custom titles if it's, for example, an urgent task, or let's say you want to assign colors to a particular person in addition to assigning them, or maybe you're using colors as a way to assign priority. So in terms of assigning members, it's pretty easy. This is what we call the task detail page. And if I want to go back to the task manager, I simply just click on the X at the top right. Or if I want to edit this task, I can just press the edit button at the top left. Now, if I want to assign the task, I don't even need to be in edit mode. I can just click on unassigned, because right now the task is unassigned. And I can search for one of my colleagues, in this case, Samantha Hopper. And I'm going to go ahead and select Samantha Hopper's name. And I see that she is assigned to this task. So now we'll be going through a workflow example, kind of like a start to finish of what a team might be accomplishing throughout the week with their lab mates. So back to where I was with my brand new muscle tissue clearing group, I can go ahead and go to that sidebar and click on tasks. I now see a kind of a list view of all of my tasks, starting with a weekly team meeting, a tutorial for Fiji ImageJ, sample collection, dissection of muscles, that's happening several times this week, and clearing. So for this example, the goal is to identify the best solution for clearing muscle tissue for multiphoton microscopy. And so as you can see, the list of tasks are outlined here, and we'll be getting into this a little bit more, but this would be very helpful for any type of weekly meeting or planning session where we kind of look to see and identify what's missing. And when you break it down in the calendar view, you can see that on Mondays at 7 a.m., there's a team meeting, followed by that tutorial I mentioned, followed by the initial sample collection. In this case, it would be the leg of a mouse. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there are 2 dissections scheduled, one for 1 hour and one for 30 minutes. And so after the dissection, we have a muscle clearing. And then at the end, there's a weekly meeting. And so the colors in this scenario are identified as, we have kind of like a reddish magenta color for our team meetings, a royal blue for dissection. For clearing, we have orange. And then for the different greens, we have kind of like one-time tasks, such as the ImageJ tutorial or the sample collection. Feel free to use whichever colors you'd like. And I know that in the lab setting, I've seen folks that just have a notebook with no colors associated with anything, but at the same time, I've seen folks with a lab notebook that has all different types of stickies and colors. And so what we're doing here is we're just bringing that ability to organize your not only data, but also schedule to a digital, kind of like a digital area. So these are my tasks for the week. And I'm going to go ahead and click on one and show you that, what this workflow looks like. I've already had my team meeting. I've already gotten the ImageJ tutorial, and I've already collected my samples. And now I'm ready for the dissection of the muscle. And so I have a protocol associated with this task here. And I'm just going to go ahead and tap on the 3 dots at the end of this protocol module. And I have 2 options. I can run the protocol or I can view the protocol. And so in this case, I'm going to run the protocol and actually dissect the muscle. And when I click on run protocol, I'm taken through a couple steps just to kind of double check and ask me what I'm doing. I tried to minimize the severity of the images here as much as possible, but as you can see, as I'm running the protocol, I'm about 7 steps in, and at this point I decide I need to take a break or pause. Maybe something's either wrong or maybe I have some questions, but in any scenario, in this workflow example, I pause at 7 steps and I save my run record. And as you can see, when I go back to the task, whether you're going back to the tasks yourself, or maybe a colleague or manager is looking at how far along you are on this particular task, I'll see that my progress is step 7 of 13 on this particular task, on this particular protocol. And so it's a nice way to really track what you're doing, what others are doing, so you know that things are kind of in alignment when you are in the lab. And just to get another overview here, I've saved that and now I'm taking a look at it. These are all of my tasks for the week. I could then go back into the dissection task, finish that protocol run record, and then move on to my next task of muscle clearing. And so that's just a workflow example using the protocol run feature within tasks. You don't necessarily have to use the run feature within tasks, but it's definitely nice to have if each of your tasks are associated with protocols. Now, earlier I had mentioned the idea of recurring meetings. And there are several different, there's actually several different types of recurring meetings you can have, and different labs manage this differently. But there's 2 types of meetings that I highly suggest, especially for any team that is, I guess, anywhere between 3 to 10. So for teams of less than 10, it's actually great to have daily meetings, a short 15-minute sync up. Doesn't have to be in person if you're not always in the same place, especially at a time like now where labs are starting to open up and practice social distancing. But a short 15-minute meeting is a great way to get connected on what your team is doing, especially if your tasks are either blocking or directly correlated to other colleagues in your group. A weekly meeting is definitely important, and I have this as weekly meetings because I'll just skip to this, back to this slide. You'll notice that on Mondays, I've scheduled a sample meeting, and then on Fridays, also another meeting. And that's because it's oftentimes nice to, at the beginning of the week, kind of like sit down and take a look at what needs to be done for either the next week or the next 2 weeks. And then at the end of the week, just have a quick review in terms of, what did we do? What experiment or what protocols do we potentially need to repeat again next week? What have we learned? What are our findings? Have we documented everything? If we've written anything down in a paper notebook, have we translated that to our ELN or in protocols.io? And so these are the kinds of things that just help you kind of double check, especially when research could go on for months and months. Everyone knows that having kind of a group collaboration or even a second opinion on things is always very helpful in case you either miss something or find a minor tweak that could make a major impact. And of course, finally, the review. So syncing up at the end of the week, just to confirm that tasks were handled efficiently is always important. Now, one thing that we definitely see in the software world, but I think applies to all types of project management and execution of tasks, is being flexible. So new tasks pop up at any time. Please welcome new tasks. It'll improve the overall workflow, whether it's identifying a new type of clearing solution in this case, and running an additional experiment, or just trying something a little bit differently. Definitely be flexible, and just because it's not in the task manager doesn't mean you cannot do it, and doesn't mean you cannot add it. It's something that I think will help your overall workflow. Even if you understand that you'd like to have that structure, it's good to add that ability to have flexibility. And finally, security. So when we're talking about running protocols, especially in a lab setting or in any other type of setting, security is super important. With the tasks that you have in your workspace, they're kind of locked down to your group, so you know that it's safe and secure. The Protocols.io platform has enterprise level security and encryption, so you know that the data that you're putting in is going to be safe and secure. And there's group level permissions for members, so you know that the tasks that you're working on are dedicated to that group, and if you are part of other groups, they won't be able to see what you're working on, what your tasks are, or anything like that. Just kind of an important thing to note. Now, with that, I will open it up to questions. And so if you have any questions, feel free to use the QA feature in Zoom. And our moderator, Anita, will be reviewing the questions. But let's give it a couple of minutes to see if any questions come in. And you can always reach me at alex@protocols.io. And for the questions, I'll bring it back to this slide with the task manager. Here we go. Great. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, as Alex mentioned, if you do have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A, or if you'd like to, you can also raise your hand and we can unmute you. So you can also ask your question directly. You should see like a little raise hand button. And I do see the first questions coming in already. And the first question is, can you add more than one protocol to a task?
Got to unmute here. Yes, so you can add multiple protocols to a particular task. So if you have a task that's a multi-protocol that requires multiple steps, that can also be done. And you can track each run record as well.
Great. And then I see another question. Can anyone in a workspace create tasks? I guess what they mean here is is anybody in a workspace allowed to create tasks for others, or is this something that admins do? How does that work?
Yeah, so everyone in a workspace does have access to the task manager. So anyone in that particular workspace can create tasks and assign other members within that workspace to the task. But just because you assign a task doesn't mean that that person will do it. So that's why those meetings are good.
Great. And then I see another question. Can the same task be assigned to be group of participants and worked on separately? For example, a group has the same protocol, but all work on individual protocols.
So a task can be assigned so different tasks can be assigned the same protocols. It would just be saved as a different run record. So if you do want to run protocols simultaneously with different people, that can be done, and you can have different run records. And I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think you can also, you could have, if you have 10 people in a group, you can also have 10, you can add the same protocol 10 times to that one task, and then every person can start one record, one run, and then you can see the different records of the different people. Right. Great. Please let us know if that didn't answer the question and we can explain more. And then I do see another question. Is the task manager available with a basic account or only for premium members?
So the task manager is available for the basic account as well. But do remember there's a limit of 5 protocols on the basic account, and protocol run records also count towards that limit. So that could be a limitation when you are running protocols in the task manager, that every protocol run is a different record that counts towards that 5 protocol limit.
Great. Those are all the questions I saw for now.
Great, and we have been recording this webinar, so we'll be publishing it. And it's been great to see some familiar faces in the list of attendees. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out at any time. Thank you very much.